Awesome. And we're live. Hey, everyone. Thank you for joining. Whether you're watching live or after the event on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, wherever you're watching, thank you so much. Today, we're talking about scaling businesses, whether that's growing your startup or you're in growth phase. Many people struggle with the various topics and issues around that. So I've managed to get Helen Yu. Welcome, Helen, who kindly agreed to come on and talk about all things scaling businesses. She is a board advisor, top 50 females in tech, an amazing author. She's just released a book called Ascend Your Startup, which we'll hear about in a sec, I'm sure. Welcome, Helen.
Hi, Lewis. Such a pleasure being here.
No, thank you for joining. So I guess before we start, what's all this about? You won the New York, I'm going to get this right, the New York Book Festival, Wall Street Journal. Well done.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it was a pleasant surprise, as a matter of fact. So I would give kudos to my publisher, Made for Success.
Nice. So is this PJ who organized our stream?
PJ is my book published, but Brian Heisman, who is a founder and CEO at Made for Success, is the publisher I've been working with since January this year.
Right.
But I wrote this book since last July, all the way through the end of the manuscript. Then I interviewed 10 publishers and I chose Made for Success. Absolutely was the right choice. So kudos.
Nice. So you wrote your book over the pandemic?
Yes.
Great time, right? Locked at home, can't go out. Just distill all of your thoughts and write a book. I should have done that myself.
I would say this book has been in my head for over 10 years. I never had the time. You've been traveling on the road so many years, never had the time to really put that on paper. And then pandemic became a catalyst for change. So it gave me the time to really think about the storyline, think about, how do I turn things into a digestible format for readers so they can, because my goal, right, I want to be a multiplier, multiply other people's joy, prosperity, and knowledge. This is really a way of doing that by giving more people the opportunity to learn how to think about, right, the things that you think about to scale business.
Yeah. Are you doing an audio book?
Yeah, this book was published in the audio version, NFT, awesome, as well as the hard copy and ebook.
Nice. I've been consuming my books on Audible now, like the last few years. I mean, when I was commuting to work regularly, I had my headphones in, I'd listen to a book or a podcast or something like that. I probably need to get back into the habit of actually like picking up a physical book and reading it, because it's like, there's just something about like paging through a book and highlighting the stuff you want. But I found, for me, I don't know about you, but just audio, I'm able to consume so much more.
Yeah, a lot of my friends prefer audiobook. I'm more of an old school when it comes to books. I have a big bookshelf here. So I read, I have to get a physical copy of the book. The books I like, I always buy a physical copy of the book. And then I flip through them from time to time. Audible is really fun when you're on the road, definitely.
It's interesting.
Sometimes when you exercise, you can listen to it, right? That's really cool.
Well, I do. To be honest, actually, when I run, I do quite a bit of running. I like to just most of my running career, it's been no music, no headphones, just my thoughts, drifting in and out. It's quite meditative for me, running or doing exercise and stuff. And then recently, I've started to put the headphones in, and I've started to listen to. I don't know why. I've started to listen to books or podcasts or a bit of music and stuff. It's really interesting. So let's move on to scaling. And I think the first thing to say, and certainly when with startups, and I've built my own startup It was one of the hardest things that I've had to do is, you start and you do everything. Like I was like, when I started, I was HR, sales, marketing, finance, cleaning up at the end of the day, all of that kind of stuff. At what point do people need to say, right, I need to identify jobs that other people can do, and then start to give up that I'm doing everything approach, and then start to build a team?
That's a very important question, right, to ask. As you said, as founders, typically early stage of the business, they're bootstrap their business, right? They have limited funding, limited team. I would always really start thinking about why you're on this journey first, and then think about what problems you're trying to solve. And then, people talk about the minimum viable product, and then you think about who is the minimum viable team can help me achieve that goal. Oftentimes, the founders have their own strengths, right? Some of the founders are very big with product. They're superb turning an idea into product, but then they may not have the go-to-market expertise. They may not have scaling company expertise. That's where they have to find someone who's been there, done that, right?
Yeah.
For example, when I really had the why, right, for me, ascending the Mount Everest was to keep a secret promise to my grandmother. That was to leave her ashes on a tall mountain. So that made me feel unstoppable. I made up my mind that nothing would hold me back, right, from my climb. But then as a founder, do you have that kind of drive or why you're doing that? Because understanding that really important. You just do that, right, because you happen to have some free time, you may change your mind really quickly, right? So my idea is that you figuring that out and then understand who you are and then what you're trying to accomplish before you think about the team, right? I think that getting someone to complement with a complementary skill set is really, really important.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's two things I want to talk about there. We can talk about Everest in a sec, because I'd love to do that. But when you start a business to start with, and we'll talk about scaling, of course, and the challenges later on down the line. But you find, when you're on your own, you're a sole trader, essentially, right? I mean, you're doing everything. I mean, I don't know, if you start a bakery, you're the baker, you're the salesperson, you're all of those things. And I think it isn't until that switches in your mind and you start to hire people and you start to, to go through that journey, you're able to create a real business. And it's interesting. I think, many people start businesses for different things. One big thing I find, certainly in the UK, which is why I set up my business, is that, everyone expects when you set up a business that you should want to scale it and you should want to sell it. And if you don't answer yes to those questions, it's a lifestyle business, which isn't really as good as if you want to scale it. So I think it's also important to note, for people listening that are building businesses or thinking about setting up, that's not the only path. It's not the only path isn't just to scale and grow. I think obviously with tech, of course, the payback is really only when you ultimately sell, right? A lot of these tech firms are raising money every 18 months and things like that. But if it's not that type of business, I think, I don't know what your thoughts are on it, but, there's many reasons and many ways to do it.
There are absolutely many ways, right? I think that everyone has different goal. People are at different stage of their life. They may have different objectives. The North Star for me may not be the same as for you, right? Some people wants to make a dent to the universe, and some people just want to have a really more balanced life. Nothing is better. Not that one thing is better than the other. It's just different. So this is why figuring out who you are, what your goal really is the first important thing, and getting prepared for that, right? If you decide that you wanted to just have a side hustle, for example, you have your day-to-day job, but I have a friend, actually, she has a e-commerce store to sell shoes online,
right?
But she has her regular job or working for a Fortune company. So that's a very different type of business she would like to have, rather than others. She does not want to grow the company so well. She just want to have some fun because she designs her own shoes, right? So the goal is different than you to think about, how do you measure the success? Is it just having fun with friends and coming up with new styles, or is something to making maybe joint venture with some other companies down the road, right? So it's very, very different. And then you can, based on the goal to design, right, the measurement. I always say, I talk about some of this, every single founder or human has blind spot. We all do, right? When we drive, a certain angle you cannot see. You won't be seeing the motorcycle passing by sometimes because you're keep looking for cars, right? And then so same applies to business world. If you're trying to start a business, first really understand what you want to accomplish, and then you think about what is the product market fit, right? The problem you're trying to solve is there's a market for you, and then really understand that if the problem you're solving also being a problem that people that you're targeting, right, called ideal customer profile, if they are interested in working with you, and who else is out there trying to solve the same problem. And then you can know, right, how big the market is, and if it's a huge market, right, the called TAM, total addressable market, is really big. Do you have enough people to scale the business, right? And then how fast you want to scale. So there are many, many questions to ask. I don't think there's an answer. Is more questions than answer, but then you should be able to, if you can't not answer these questions, you can find someone who been there, done that to help you along the way, right? This is why I hired a Sherpa to help me climb. I hired the publisher to help me publish my book because I've never done that before. If I just go alone, I can make it, but then probably not without the bruises, right? Without the challenges, more higher challenges.
Definitely. No, I love that. I think it's an interesting message. A lot of people and society gears you up for this is the right way, or you should be doing it this way. And I think for me, it's all about it's like you could do it this way, and you could do it this way, and you can do it this way, and you can do it. So I think when you're setting up, when you're starting, when you're scaling, expanding, all of that stuff, I think it's okay to try different paths. And it's often difficult, because as a leader growing something, you have all of this external pressure, like you feel you should do it this way because they've done really well doing it that way. And it's actually quite tough mentally to just be like, do you know what? Let me take a breath and let me think about, all of the aspects around what I'm doing and how to get to where I want to get to. And also the other thing is there's no straight line, right? Like it just doesn't work like that. It's always like this. And when you understand and appreciate that's the game, I think it takes a lot of pressure off. So what are your thoughts on so with when you're building, a lot of people go quick, right? Like they develop product quick. They want to get to market quick. They want to raise funding. They want to get customer, Do you think there's value in just slowing down a bit and just really focusing on building great foundations to then expand?
I've spoken probably, I've had a 500 plus conversations, not a single person or conversation I've had, people say, hey, I want to slow down, right? All of the people I spoke to, the question is, how can I accelerate the growth? How can I grow this faster? As I think we all wanted to have the speed, but we have to realize sometimes in order to move forward, you have to take a step back, right? Yeah. This is where, but then more importantly, the 4 lessons I learned through the Mount Everest base camp climbing experience, first of all, you have to prepare, right? You have to spend, because I'm not a mountain climber to begin with, where I spend months to really practice, right? To exercise, because I could not afford, this was many years ago, I could not afford for a personal trainer. What you're going to do, you have to, have discipline. You have to be out there, get up early every day to get yourself trained physically and emotionally, and you have to speak to people who've been done that, and think about all the things that could happen to you down the road. You have to be very, very well prepared, right? However, no matter how well you are prepared, there are always unexpected things happen to you along the way, right?
Yeah.
For example, for me, many, many things happened along the way, and the people who came with me, one by one, they dropped, right? Toward the last, portion of my trip, you're alone. As a founder, oftentimes it happens where you could be left alone. Your co-founder could have left, could leave you. Investor may not be happy with the progress you make, or your family members feel like you haven't spent enough time with them. So there are many things could happen to you. You needed to adapt to change along the way. And then
No, I agree. It's interesting. I think, like you've done, and I try and do as well. Well, I do. It's good to go through difficult things, like to do difficult stuff. Like I do CrossFit about 5 times a week. And whatever comes up the rest of the day, I probably won't be doing anything quite as difficult as having to back squat hundreds of kilograms, or, like run, and it's good, and it really prepares me. Like the Everest experience for you seems to have got you strong and hard, and prepared for the business life. I think it's useful doing difficult stuff every day, even if it's like spend 20 minutes in a sauna or an ice bath, or go run 5K, or whatever's difficult for you. Because with business, you're going to be doing it for a long time, right? It's a little bit of a cliche. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Absolutely.
And I think you've got to treat yourself like an elite athlete. Sleep well, eat well, do exercise, do difficult things, prepare yourself for the unexpected. I don't think as many people do that as they should. There's been so much burnout recently, or maybe we just hear about it more often now, but it's clearly always been there. But many people I speak to during the pandemic, they've been working harder, longer, less holidays, in front of a screen. So I think now more than ever, it's important to make sure you look after yourself, and then you get more productive and all of those things. So
absolutely. This is why the company culture is so important too, right? So regardless of the size of your company, you have, really company culture drives sustainable growth. Central to that is the employee experience, because if you have a better employee experience, that leads to better customer experience. This is, spending time allowing yourself to really be re-energized is so critical. This means not just some of the time and all the time.
Yeah, I think I've quoted him before, but Simon Sinek, I think his quote was, I'm going to get it slightly wrong, but if your employees love your product, your customers will love your product. Or your employees have to love your product first before your customers, something like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But culture is vital, for attracting talent, which ultimately, you can have the best business plan and good funding, but if you can't attract the right people, you're not going to be able to grow your business. And culture for me, and for candidates, as we speak to people and during the work that we do, culture is almost right at the top now of the things that people are looking for. And in the tech space, there's so much recruitment going on. It's a real battle for good people. And I think the firms that have got the right culture and they've treated their employees well over the pandemic will ultimately end up winning that.
I totally I echo what you just said, Lewis. I really talk about cultural collaboration, right? What that means, it means taking intentional action to build an inclusive and thriving culture where it really very safe to share ideas with each other. It begins with very thoughtful commitment to culture first, as a way to bring people together. Right? If you think about, I talk about minimum viable product, but there got to be minimum viable culture where you don't try to boil the ocean all in one day, but rather you really sit down in a simple set of shared beliefs and stakeholders to lean on in order to create remarkable outcome for your entire employee, for your entire team and company.
Definitely. What do you think of, and this is interesting because like during the pandemic, we've had a real shift to, working from home, clearly. And then the conversation kind of moved on a little bit to work from anywhere. And we had Facebook pay by location, go live in, a lower cost location and we'll pay you less salary and whatever. And then we had Twitter. I remember at the beginning of the pandemic saying, you can work from home forever. And then like asterisk, as long as your role, requires it, whatever. And then they've come out subsequently to say, actually, you're going to have to come into the office as well. And you've got Apple and Goldman saying you're going to have to be in. Where do you sit now, do you think, with that? Do you think we're going to end up finding that it's drifting back to companies are going to want people in? Or do you think we'll end up with a more of a work from anywhere style?
I've always been working remotely, right, as a remote employee, working with a team global scale. I thought pandemic would not make much of difference to me, but I was wrong, to be honest with you. So being remote is very different than being remote on the video call all day long, 5 days a week. So I have to say that a hybrid culture is much better, right? I finally in June, I've been working with this startup since February as their interim service leader. So in June, I had my first business trip. So we flew to Nashville, right? The executive team met with each other. We had our team building event, bowling event. It was fantastic. It was overdue after a year and a half being locked down in the room, not seeing everybody, anyone, right? And then, yeah, we hugged each other and we had fun. We cared, like we did not wear masks, right? We all vaccinated, obviously. So the point is that was overdue. You can really see the need for human interaction, right? Ever since we came back from that trip, I feel like I'm more re-energized, and we pick up more productivity working with each other because we get to know each other at a personal level. So that will never be replaced by remote working, right? Obviously, there's some survey about, hey, the productivity has increased by 40%. But when it comes to the newer employees, when it comes to people just entering the workforce, I think it's really important for them to meet with others. And then even for people who've been there a long time, it's critical for people to get to know each other outside of the working environment.
Yeah. Oh, I think, we're human. I mean, it's so, you're right. I get so energized by meeting people, new people, conversations like this. I mean, this is great, but if we were in the same room, it would have been, it's just different, right? It's a different vibe. I have made really good new friends over this last 18 months on video, but still for me, the face-to-face thing is amazing. And I think, as time goes on, a blend for sure is going to be important. I think for companies hoping to attract talent as they scale, though, I think for me, a one size fits all doesn't work. And it's about, asking individuals, what's your preference? How would you like to work? How are you most effective? How can we construct and organize something that works for you? I think it feels like if that's the approach, firms will do well to attract people. I'm not sure, mandating 5 days or 4 days is the best way, but I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how it unfolds.
Yeah, it really depends on what type of job you're doing, right? Depends on the culture of the company. To me, it's like people should be measured based on, should be accountable for the result or the outcome, right? Rather than being measured based on the hours. However, there are people, frontline worker, manufacturer, they are measured based on the hours they put in, because it does matter. So really, I don't think there's a one size fits all. It is really depends on your job function, what you're doing, and then how you're being measured. So that's why it's so important for companies to clearly define the roles and responsibilities, setting up expectations. That's how they can hold people accountable. But then they can reward the top performers and weeding out the toxic employees.
Definitely, you're right. If you are lucky enough to be able to have the conversation to maybe work at home or the office, be really grateful. I mean, there are many people that have to go to work, so I think that's really a really interesting one. I want to put a question up. I've had it emailed in a few times, and I know you're interested in this as well. So, so do you think there are certain types of people that are better at startups versus growth? And we've seen it a lot, right? People that start a business up, and then they either step aside, or there's a point where they're kind of almost pushed aside because they're not quite the right person to scale it. What do you think about that?
There are a few characteristics of successful startup founders I've worked with. They thrive on a strong sense of personal efficacy to execute their vision. They have keen eyes for innovation to identify new products and new markets. They're great listeners, right, who turn ideas into actionable insights. They also articulate their vision really, really well. They inspire devotions in others. Typically, their risk tolerance level is much higher. Their motivation for achievement is stronger. But that does not mean, it's really hard to pin down, right, to say what exactly there also really depends on, how they have to be very good at hiring the right people to be with them at the right time, right? I mean, a founder alone won't really be able to take a company from where they are at to where they need to be. Think about where Amazon was, where Jeff was, right, 20 years ago. But look at where he's now, and he would not have done that without the team that he has in place. Look at Microsoft, right? When Steve Ballmer was there, the company shrinked by 50%, and now you look at the new CEO, he's fantastic, right?
Microsoft are a great story. They've done great, yeah.
So the CEO does make a difference, but then at the end of the day, it's not just the CEO or the founder, it is the people. They hire the people, right? The executive team and the leadership team, who everyone else who makes a difference.
Yeah, for me, it's moving from I to we, right? Like you see, as you go to school and university, if you go to university and when you enter into the workforce, so much of your performance is based on, so much of your success is based on your personal performance. Like, you study hard, you get good grades, you get to the good university, you get into the great company, you do well, you get promoted. Suddenly, suited for it or not, because not everyone is suited for management or leadership. And again, that's not the only career path, so that's okay too. But if you end up in a management role, you quickly have to realize that your success is dependent on others, and suddenly it's you're servicing your employees, right? You're making, you're giving everything they can to make sure they succeed. So we all do better, and it's hard to get into that mindset. It's tough.
It is, absolutely. I would say the leadership skills is not, people are not born into the skills. It can be developed, right? I was very fortunate to work for many, many great leaders that they really helped me to develop my skills and then to be able to do what I do today. So I'm very thankful for many of them. And I can, to this date, I still have them in my mind, or every time I want to do things, I say, what would he say if he were here? Or what would Chris, or what would she be doing if she were here? So a lot of them really made remarkable not impression, but also impact on me, right? So I want to be a leader like Chris, right? She's a teacher. She teaches the special needs kids today, but she used to be a leader who promoted me to lead the consulting team when I was a consultant. But I learned so much from her, right? So that's kind of the people who made measurable impact on you, make you want to be a leader like them. And that's how people progress, right? That's why it's so important to work with courageous leaders who really help you grow. And then I think it really makes a huge, significant impact on others.
Hugely. It's so important. I've learned so much over the years from great leaders I've worked with. Ones that weren't good, you still learn. It's all a learning experience. And you're right. It's like, it's good to collect experience. And it's why also, I've spoken to a few young people recently, like young as in they've just entered the workforce. And one came to see me for coffee. He was a friend of mine's brother anyway, and he wanted to leave his job. He's a really good developer. And I said, you've been there 5 months, what's going on? He said, well, I'm not, I haven't got a seat at the leadership table. I should be helping them run the company. They're not taking my, my thoughts, decisions and views. And I was like, you just have to be patient. Like you're going to be working for a long time. And a lot of people are rushing to get to, the top spot or all of these things. And, if you're patient and you learn and you collect experience, you're going to start to do well, because some of the most successful entrepreneurs don't start their businesses until a bit later on in life, interestingly.
Exactly. The average age of successful entrepreneur is 45, right? So yeah, people are surprised because you hear about the success stories about young, early ages, but those are not the average. Warren Buffett did not become successful until age of 63, right? So many others. So it depends on, I would say, if you are chasing a job title or status, you may not be as successful. But if you relentlessly pursue your passion and purpose, and then really trying to make some impact, and then focus on learning, focus on growing, that's really will propel you to grow faster, right? And I always think about getting yourself out of the comfort zone is so important. If you are super comfortable about what you're doing every single day, you haven't tried harder, or you haven't tried hard enough, and then you can do more, right? Not to say you have to change jobs, but you can always learn a new skill, even cooking or skiing or something different, right? It does not have to be professional change. It can be personal change. It can be personal challenge. It can be something that, for me, I'm more an introvert, even though I look like extrovert, and it really forced me. I had to force myself to feel more comfortable to speak in public, and then I learned how to speak at conferences, all that. But it took years to get to that point, right? I made a point to make the practice. I made a point to personally do that, so that to force myself to feel more comfortable. I realized that I feel more comfortable talking to other people, have them share their story with me to begin with, right? So that's how you get better and improve constantly, because I don't think a lot of skills are more developed, can be developed, not necessarily born, right?
I completely agree. I was so scared doing these things. Podcasting, live streams, coming on, knowing people are watching, knowing that it's going to be out in the on the internet forever. It's quite a daunting thing. Or standing in front of even like 10 people and speaking, right? It takes a lot of courage, because you always worry about what other people think, and real confidence, I think, is not really caring what other people think of you, just going for it. And then as you do it, you get better and you acquire the skills and you get a bit more confident. And, it's easy to say, I know. But, if you do it step by step, you can do it and you can get there. So, no, you're right. I think, a lot of the young, successful entrepreneur stories aren't the norm. Forget what you see on Instagram, forget what you see on Twitter, on Facebook. The norm is, the successful people work super, super hard.
Yeah.
They're continually learning and trying things. And, they're the ones that really end up being successful, I think.
I do agree. I think the grit and resilience are really set you apart, are the characteristics that set you apart, right, from others.
Yeah. What are your views on mentors and exec coaches?
Um, my view is that it's so important for all of us, right, to have a personal board of director. When I say personal board of director, are the ones who could be a mentor,
Yeah.
who could be a coach. But I think the most importantly is to have sponsors, right, for you, because the mentors can mentor you to learn a specific skill. And then the sponsor are the ones who really put their neck out for you to put you in a position where other people may not have seen, right, that in you, but he or she believes in you to give you the opportunity, right? I have to
Yeah.
say that I work for Marketo now. Marketo is part of Adobe. Um, I would give the credit to Phil Fernandez, who was the co-founder and CEO at Marketo. And I've learned so much, right, working for him and his executive team. He took me under his wings and then also gave me many opportunities. I've never, give me an opportunity to run the global team and then give me an opportunity to run the, after the professional services, run the customer success team, which had retention renew. So kept growing my responsibility because he believed in me. That was me doing that in first time, right? Running
Yeah.
things that I didn't really have opportunity to do. That's how leaders, right? The significant or phenomenal leader, that's what they do. They bet on you. I consider that as being a sponsor, right? The
Yeah.
mentor are the ones I work with many others who really help develop your skills. And then if you are, for example, presentation skills, right? They tell you, what you can do better, or they really point out to you what you can do better. So you'll need both. You need the sponsor, you need the mentor, you need, all different kind of people based on where you are at with your journey. And you can change them each year, right? Every year in January, I will look at my personal board of director. I refresh them. I let them know, right? I really want you to play a role in my growth.
Yeah.
Here's, would you be willing to invest in me? If you do, let's talk once a month, right? Let's work with each other. And then is there anything I can help you with, right? Because it's
Yeah.
not just one way street. And oftentimes you'll find that there are things that you can offer to your to others as well, then you can in exchange for mutually beneficial professional relationship.
Yeah, I love that. I talk about it quite a lot. And I got it from my friend Deetra Giles, actually. So I want to mention her. But, being the CEO of your life, taking ownership of your career, even if you're an employee, right?
Yeah.
Be the CEO of your life and do what you've just said, put together a board, put together people around you that can help you on your journey. You don't have to be a founder. You don't have to be a CEO, but you are all a CEO of your own life. And I think, the days of waiting for your company to provide you the opportunities to train and develop and learn, I think are going. I think you've got to take ownership now, and doing what you've said, I think is great. Put together a personal board of directors. I love that. It's a good thing, really good thing to do. Last point now, because we're at. So if you're in a startup, you've grown your startup. How do you actually go about scaling? Like, do you have some advice on, that mindset shift from, you've built something, you want to scale it, and suddenly it's like, wow, okay, I need to actually go and do it.
Yeah. So when it comes to building a company, typically there are three major phases you go through, right? The first one is you turn idea into product. The second phase, you turn product into market, and then market to scale. As you go through these three phases, as I describe in my book, all of us run into 5 disconnects, right? Growth disconnect. The early stage is the product market disconnect. So you really need, as a founder, need to be prepared, understand, do some market analysis, understand, what problem you're trying to solve, and what is there a market for the problem you're trying to solve, and who else is out there solving the same problem. And then, once you figure out the product market fit, you move on to the second disconnect, which I call define minimum disconnect. This is not just about minimum viable product, it's about minimum viable team, minimum viable culture, most importantly, minimum viable repeatability, right? Where exactly, if you acquire 100 customers, how can you go about acquiring 10 times more, right? So that's when you get that repeatability is where you start seeing the trend to go scale. And then the third disconnect is the voice of customer disconnect, right? So when you climb Mount Everest, you start from the base camp, you go to summit 1, then you go back to the base camp, you go to summit 2, then you back to base camp again. Going through that process is called you acclimate, right? Your body to fit the high altitude environment. Building a business is similar to that environment. You are always on a high altitude environment when you are building a company. So sometimes in order to move forward, you have to take a step back. So that's acclimate to the voice of your customer. And then as you start scaling, right, moving from market to scale, you have to have well-defined processes, because it used to be early stage, we just do whatever, right? Whomever available, go do it. But then you have more than 100 employees, or even you can't call them by names, remember every single person's name anymore. And you really need to start documenting how do you go about, right, the sales journey, customer journey, who is responsible for what. Because if you don't, it's going to be very difficult to move things faster. And then lastly, if you want to hold your team accountable, you have to have measurement, right? There's a measurement disconnect. You have to know how you measure the success, right? Define the roles and responsibilities for different functions, because this time you may have HR, legal, services, and sales, and you have so many functions, or marketing, making sure that everyone knows what their roles and responsibility is. Most importantly, how you measure, right? What is the metric you measure each of the function, the leaders and team, so that you can really inspire their devotion in achieving the common goal. So those are, if you really think about that along the lines of these 5 disconnect, you can overcome, you can actually avoid some of the challenges early, right? Or you can hire people knowing that here's your gap. As a founder, you know product super well, you may not know the go-to-market, then you can hire someone along the lines to help you bridge those gaps.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much for that. It's also interesting right now, you're seeing, obviously partly because of the pandemic, but you're seeing a lot more startups. You're also seeing a lot of firms scaling now as well. I mean, certainly in tech, if we talk about tech, there's so much recruitment going on right now. It's crazy. And quite a few people have asked me, is this a good time to start a business? It must have been different 10 years ago. Things have changed. And, actually I set up in 2010. So it was like, towards the end of the financial crisis. And for me, times like this is the best time to start something or to scale something. There's so many interesting trends going on, great opportunities. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but I think it's just a really great time to do it.
I think it's a great time to think about, I take a break to think about what really matters to you. And to me, Microsoft actually wrote a report, right? Employee survey. They call this the Great Resignation. 39% of people are changing their jobs. So this is time to revisit your priority, to think about what really matters to you and to people who you care about, right? So in terms of, if this is a good time to start a business, it's never a, good time or bad time to start a business. To me, is that you got to really spend some time being prepared. This may give you a little more time to get prepared for your business.
Yeah.
But always, I would say, always really think about why. Think about why, because without a purpose, you're gonna get lost, right? You're gonna be, there's a lot of purpose gives us a destination, motivation to get there too. So it's very critical for you to think through that before you go out and start a business.
Great advice. Great advice. Thank you, Helen. Thank you so much. We've done 45 minutes. It's flown by. Thank you very much for joining me. A note on your book. So where can I get the paperback and the audio?
So you can actually go to Amazon, or you can go to my website, taigongadvisory.com. There are 4 ways you can purchase my book, right? Either through Amazon.com. You can actually get Audible version 2. It's also being launched through OpenSea, so they have the NFT version as well.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so much. Mine is actually on its way. So I'll write you a book review once I've done it. But thank you so much. Really nice to chat with you.
Thank you for having me. Yeah.
Pleasure.
Sure.
Pleasure.
Bye.
See ya.